If you're listening to this story today, I just want to remind you that every life, no matter how weary, always has an unexpected turning point. The story I'm about to tell you is proof of that. A very real, very American story where the kindness of one seemingly insignificant man was enough to change the lives of many people. But before we get into the story, if you enjoy healing, humane, and hopeful stories like this, I hope you'll take a moment to like the video, share if you find it valuable, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next emotional journey. Now, let's begin. That morning, Marcus Johnson woke up with a feeling he couldn't quite describe. The familiar little living room in his old house in Riverstone Block was as quiet as ever. But there was something strange. There was the gentle clinking of pots and pans, the soft sound of running water in the sink, and the faint aroma of hot coffee wafted through the room. Marcus opened his eyes and slowly sat up on the worn couch. His head felt heavy, as if he hadn't slept all night. He rubbed his temples, trying to remember what had happened. All that remained were images of a violent storm rain lashing against the car windows and the flashing red lights of an SUV that had skidded into a ditch. He sighed softly, intending to get up, make some coffee, and wake Ava up to get ready for school. But as soon as he turned around, Marcus froze. In the small kitchen just a few steps away, a woman stood with her back to him. She was wearing a slightly oversized white shirt that hung loosely on her, and Marcus realized it was his shirt. The shirt he'd left on the chair last night because he hadn't had time to wash it. The morning light streamed in through the window, casting a warm, golden glow on her shoulders. Her long hair, slightly disheveled after a restless night's sleep, fell gently down her back. The faint scent of coffee mingled with the aroma of milk, warming the room. Marcus felt like his heart stopped beating for a beat. He never brought women home. He certainly never allowed anyone to enter his kitchen so casually. Ever since Ava was born, he had always been cautious, avoiding letting his daughter witness anything ambiguous or inexplicable. But that woman stood there as if the place belonged to her, as if she were familiar with the old kitchen, familiar with the 10-year-old coffee machine, familiar with the light shining on the wooden tabletop that he still polished every spring. Marcus was about to stand up when she turned back. Her eyes met his. Bright, alert, and with a hint of observation, as if he were a stranger in his own home. She smiled softly, a smile that wasn't overly intimate nor too distant, but one that could make one's heart skip a beat. She spoke in a low, slightly hoarse voice after a long night. "Morning. You really don't remember last night, do you?" Marcus opened his mouth but couldn't utter a word. He looked at the shirt she was wearing, then back at himself. He tried to piece together the fragmented memories of the previous night, but all he could remember was the sound of rain, the lights, and the fact that he had brought an unconscious woman home. After that, everything faded away. She set her coffee cup down on the kitchen counter and took a few steps closer to him. Her gaze didn't waver. No shyness, no fear, only the unwavering determination of someone accustomed to facing awkward situations. Her voice was soft but sharp, I suppose. "I owe you an explanation." Marcus stood up, tense. He felt as if he'd been thrust into a scene he didn't belong in. She continued her voice even last night. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here." Marcus's heart sank. Fragments of memories began to become clearer. The SUV skidding into the ditch, the shattering of glass, her labored breathing. He lifted her up, trying to keep her conscious, taking her home because the roads were blocked, covering her with his jacket to keep her warm. Marcus swallowed hard. He needed to know everything. He whispered, "Are you all right?" She nodded. "Much better. Thanks to you." The sincerity in her voice momentarily unsettled Marcus. Not because of the thank you, but because of the way she looked at him. A look unlike that of the strangers he had helped before. There was something deeper, more powerful, as if she were trying to read a part of his life through her eyes. A moment of silence followed. Then suddenly the sound of light footsteps echoed from the hallway. Ava had just stepped out of her bedroom, her hair still messy, clutching an old teddy bear. The little girl rubbed her eyes and looked at the strange woman standing in the kitchen. "Daddy, who is that?" Marcus hadn't even had time to think of a reply. The woman leaned down to Ava's eye level, smiling gently. "Just someone your father saved last night." Ava looked at her father, then at herself. "Your dad is amazing. He always saves people." Marcus blushed. The woman looked at Ava with a very strange expression. An expression Marcus didn't understand at the time, but he later realized it was the look of someone who hadn't felt safe with anyone for years. Ava went back to her room. The kitchen became quiet again. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to maintain his usual composure. "What's your name?" she replied softly, but her gaze softened slightly. "I am Zara Hale." The name didn't elicit any reaction from Marcus, until Zara continued, "And I think part of last night's story will surprise you." Her voice slowed, the tone shifted as if foreshadowing something he hadn't anticipated. Marcus stood motionless. He felt the words pull him into a state of profound unease. Zara looked him straight in the eyes. "If you really don't remember everything, then I need to tell you something that might leave you speechless once again." That statement brought an end to a quiet morning and opened up an unexpected journey. To understand why Zara Hale was in Marcus Johnson's small kitchen that morning, we must go back to the previous evening, an evening neither of them could ever forget. That night, the Michigan sky seemed to split into compressed, dark fragments. The wind howled through the old roofs of the Riverstone block. Rain lashed down on the streets like tiny pebbles. The weather forecast indicated a moving storm with winds exceeding 60 miles per hour. Anyone who had to be outside wondered whether they should take another risk or turn back. But Marcus didn't have that luxury option. He had just left a late meeting at the machine shop about 7 miles from home. The meeting lasted nearly 3 hours, during which he had to endure cold, dismissive remarks from a new group of leaders. They spoke softly, respectfully on the surface, but every word contained an undertone that Marcus was all too familiar with. A black man, a former CEO who had been ousted from his old company, would never be treated as a true equal. They advised him to focus on the technical aspects, saying that a strategic vision role doesn't fit your profile. Those words, seemingly polite, were insidious because he knew they weren't professional criticism. It was a bias that still persists in many boardrooms across America. As he stepped out of the metal factory gate, Marcus clutched his denim jacket tighter. The wind lashed against his face, chilling him to the bone. A wave of exhaustion washed over him, but he had to drive home. Ava needed him. Without him, there was no one to replace him. He started the engine of his pickup truck, which was over 10 years old, and drove into the rain, which was as thick as a curtain. The wipers were working at full speed, but they still couldn't clear all the water from the windshield. Marcus strained his eyes, observing every sign and the few streetlights that were still on. Water streamed down the hillside like a small creek, causing his car to tilt constantly. He turned on the radio so he wouldn't be swallowed up by the howling wind. A weather report blared. People should avoid going outside. Many areas have experienced localized flooding. Several roads are completely closed. Marcus sighed softly. He didn't want Ava to wait too long. She had trouble sleeping when it was stormy. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his headlights sweeping across the darkness ahead, and at that moment, he saw it. A black SUV lay tilted on its side by the roadside, its front end submerged in a large ditch. Rain poured into the front compartment, its hazard lights flickering weakly as if about to go out. A light white smoke rose from the engine compartment. Marcus slammed on the brakes. The pickup truck glided smoothly over the water and then came to a stop. His senses immediately warned him the car had been in an accident recently and its owner might be trapped inside. He restrained his emotions, not out of fear, but because of Ava. If he were in danger, who would take care of Ava? But if he ignored it and the person in the car didn't survive, could he live peacefully? Marcus opened the car door amidst the howling wind and plunged into the pouring rain. As he approached, he heard the sound of metal cracking and water splashing against the vehicle's body. The SUV door was dented, and the windshield was shattered. Inside, a woman lay unconscious, her head tilted to one side, her seatbelt tightly fastened across her shoulder. Marcus tapped lightly on the window. "Lady, hey, can you hear me?" No response. He glanced quickly at the engine compartment. Small sparks were emanating from the torn cover. There was no time. Marcus picked up a large rock nearby and smashed it against the rear window. Once, twice, 3 times. The glass shattered, flying like tiny shards of ice. He brushed away the debris and climbed inside. The woman was ice cold. Her breathing was so weak that he had to put his ear close to her face to hear it. Marcus cut the seatbelt, slipped his hand under her shoulder and gently pulled to avoid further injury. As he lifted her, he could clearly feel the coldness of her body against his chest. He ran through the rain, struggling to maintain his balance, his feet sinking into puddles. After placing her in the passenger seat of the pickup truck, Marcus closed the door and sat in the driver's seat, breathing heavily. She opened her eyes slightly. In the dim light, her eyes showed both panic and weakness. She whispered, her voice hoarse like a whisper. "Why did you help me?" Marcus replied simply, "Because you needed it." He then started the engine. The road to the hospital was blocked. Part of the main route had been washed away by the water and police had set up barricades everywhere. The news announced there were only a few temporary shelters left, but none were near his house. Marcus looked at the woman beside him, huddled in her wet clothes, her lips pale. If he hadn't brought her back to the small house, she wouldn't have survived until rescue arrived. He made the decision. It's not perfect. It's not easy to explain, but it's right. He steered toward Riverstone Block. Marcus's house was at the end of a row of houses built in the 70s. He'd climbed onto the roof himself to fix it the previous fall. The front door creaked every time he opened it. The heating system only worked properly when he tapped in the right spot. It's not a fancy place, but it's the safest place right now. Marcus carried the woman into the small bedroom. He placed her on his bed. He found a thick duvet and covered her with it. Her breathing gradually improved, but was still weak. He reached out to check her temperature. Cold, very cold. He turned to look at the wall clock. It was almost midnight. Ava was asleep in the next room, unaware that her father had just brought a stranger into the house. Marcus sat down on the chair beside the bed. The rain continued to pound against the window as if trying to penetrate the glass. He looked at the woman's face on the bed, a strong face, yet one that was very vulnerable, a face he had never seen in this neighborhood before. Marcus wondered, who was this woman? Why was she driving an expensive SUV alone in the storm? And why did he feel like she was carrying something heavier than this rainy night around 1 a.m.? Marcus heard faint footsteps. Ava peeked through the bedroom door. "Daddy, aren't you asleep?" The little girl's voice was as soft as the wind slipping through the crack in the door. Marcus stepped out of the room. "Dad's just watching over someone who needs help. You go back to sleep." Ava peeked through the crack in the door and saw the silhouette of a strange woman. "Did Dad save her?" "Yes. Dad was just doing the right thing." Ava smiled, taking her father's arm. "You're always like this, Dad." Marcus bent down and kissed his child's hair. A flash of lightning outside cast a beam of light into the room, illuminating the sleeping woman's face. That light made Marcus glimpse something complex hidden in her closed eyes, like a long story he hadn't yet understood. That night, Marcus stayed awake until almost dawn. He dozed off on the couch, and when he opened his eyes, she was standing in the kitchen wearing his shirt. A seemingly ordinary moment, yet it marked the beginning of a journey Marcus could never have foreseen. That morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, casting a soft golden glow on the floor. The air in the small kitchen still carried the scent of the previous night's rain, mingled with the warm aroma of coffee, strangely pleasant. But standing in the doorway of the living room, Marcus Johnson felt anything but comfortable. He stood motionless, his hand still resting lightly on the couch, his eyes fixed on the image before him. Zara Hale, the woman he rescued from the sinking SUV last night. The woman he brought home because he had no other choice. Now she's wearing his white shirt, her back turned, pouring coffee as if this kitchen has belonged to her for a long time. Marcus felt like he was watching a movie, but he couldn't remember what had happened before. He only remembered the rain, her weak voice, and how he had tried to keep her alive. But he didn't remember giving her his coat when she woke up, or what he had said afterward. Maybe he's too tired. Maybe he's more exhausted than he thinks. Or maybe there were things he didn't know about last night. She turned around. Her eyes were deep and alert, a slight subtle smile, but enough to make Marcus's heart skip a beat. "Morning, Marcus." Her voice was low, soft, slightly hoarse, as if she had experienced the world in a single night. It didn't suit the oversized shirt she was wearing, but it strangely fit the small kitchen, the morning light, and the silence between them. Marcus took a deep breath. "Are you all right?" "Much better." She offered him the coffee cup, but Marcus didn't reach for it. He just looked at her cautiously. Zara shrugged slightly and set the cup down on the table without pressure, without trying to please, and without showing excessive gratitude. Her calm demeanor was almost frightening. "You really don't remember last night?" she asked. Marcus frowned. "I remember pulling her out of the car, bringing her here, but then you fell asleep on the couch." Her voice wasn't reproachful, just stating the truth. And I woke up around 4 in the morning. I was shivering from the cold, my head ached, and my clothes were wet. I saw your jacket on the chair, so I put it on. She paused for a moment, looking directly at Marcus. I hope you don't mind. Marcus swallowed hard. He didn't mind. But he also didn't know how to react to a stranger, calmly putting on his shirt in the morning. Before he could answer, the sound of light footsteps echoed. Ava, with messy hair and clutching a teddy bear, walked into the kitchen. Daddy, are you awake? But when she saw Zara, her eyes narrowed with curiosity. And who are you? At that moment, Marcus wanted to stand between the two of them. Not because he was afraid Zara would do anything to Ava, but because he didn't want his daughter to have to face the adult's mess. But Zara sat down slowly and gently so Ava wouldn't feel pressured. You're the person my father helped last night. My dad is always helping people, Ava said, as if it were an obvious truth of life. Zara chuckled softly, a genuine, not a polite smile. But Marcus clearly saw something deeper in those eyes, a touch of emotion that perhaps even Zara herself hadn't anticipated. Ava ran back to her room to change for school. The two adults were left alone in the small kitchen. Marcus took a deep breath. Do you need me to call a taxi to take you home? Zara leaned against the kitchen counter. Arms crossed her sharp gaze, observing his reaction. No need. My driver has been waiting since 6 in the morning. Marcus was startled. So, why don't you just leave? She shrugged. I want to talk to you first. Marcus clenched his fist slightly. What do you want to talk about? Zara walked to the dining table. She placed something on it. A check. A check with an amount that sent chills down Marcus's spine, $5,000. This is to thank you for last night. Marcus looked at her, then at the check, then back at her. Her gaze wasn't arrogant nor condescending, just calm. But it was that very calmness that made Marcus's heart race. He pushed the check back towards her. I don't need the money. Zara tilted her head, not angry, just slightly surprised. Most men would accept. I am not them. Zara gazed at Marcus for a long time, a look without fear, without avoidance. A look that seemed to want to read his past, all the pain he had endured. Finally, she said slowly, So, I misjudged you. No, Marcus replied faster than he thought. You're just judging me the way most of society judges black men, thinking I'm so desperate for money that I'll take any amount offered to me. Zara, I'm silent. The small room felt heavier than the sound of the rain last night. Do you think I consider you inferior to me? She asked, her voice low but clear. Marcus didn't shy away. I think you're used to living in a world where everything has a price. Zara took a deep breath. I understand. No rebuttal, no argument, just a quiet acknowledgement. She picked up the check and folded it. I'm sorry. Marcus looked at her. He hadn't expected that apology to make his chest tighten. Not with pride, not with victory, but with relief. Because she wasn't trying to justify herself. She turned away. Thank you. Zara stepped towards the door. But as her hand touched the doorknob, she stopped. Without turning around, she whispered, Marcus, I have a feeling that I wasn't the only one saved last night. The door opened, then closed. There were no more traces of her footsteps, only the faint scent of coffee and his shirt, still carrying the lingering smell of last night's rain. Ava ran out, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. Daddy, is she coming back? Marcus looked at the door, not knowing how to answer. I don't know, son. Ava nodded naturally, then said something that made Marcus's heart race. I think she likes Dad. Marcus chuckled, pretending to wave his hand dismissively. Don't think nonsense. But then I looked at that little face, then at the kitchen, then at the shirt that still retained the warmth of Zara. For the first time in years, Marcus felt a slight tremor in his heart. Just a small feeling, but enough to make him stand silently in front of the sink for a long time. He didn't know that this story had only just begun, and that shirt was just the first hint of what was to come. As the door closed behind Zara, the small house returned to the familiar stillness of the morning. But in Marcus's heart, something was no longer at peace. He stood at the sink, water flowing steadily from the tap. A faint light filtered through the window, casting a patch of light on the stained wall. Marcus watched the water, not really looking. His mind was sinking into a realm of memories he had tried to avoid for years. Marcus Johnson was never the quiet man he is now, living in an old neighborhood. He once stood on the grand stage of a prestigious technology conference in Atlanta, lights shining on his face, applause echoing throughout the room. Marcus used to be the CEO of a cybersecurity tech startup, a company he built from scratch, starting in a room that was about half the size of his living room now. He recruited talented young people, worked through the night, wrote every line of code, raised capital, and gave presentations. In 2 years, his company grew so rapidly that many major investment funds sought him out. The first article written about him called him the Black Innovator who might change cybersecurity. He was a rare black man featured on the front page of a major tech magazine. But then, like many stories in America, the spotlight came with an invisible pressure that Marcus couldn't put into words. The pressure of always having to prove he was worthy. The pressure that one small mistake would mean they'd say he wasn't good enough, not experienced enough, not the right skin color. Things began to fall apart when the company needed a larger funding round to scale up. In the brightly lit conference room, cold stares swept across his face. One of the investors said something Marcus would never forget. "You're smart, Marcus. But the company at this stage needs a leader who looks more trustworthy. More trustworthy." A seemingly harmless phrase, but enough for Marcus to understand what he was up against. A month later, he was removed from the CEO position of the very company he founded, the reason given a change in leadership strategy. But Marcus knew. He understood very well. He left the company empty-handed and with a heart as heavy as stone. Ava was only 5 years old then. Watching his daughter sleep in her car seat every time he picked her up from school, he wondered, what should I teach her about the world, about the color of my skin, about being rejected simply because I didn't meet other people's standards? He moved to Riverstone Block because that's where he could afford to rent a small apartment. From a CEO standing in a large, glass-enclosed conference room, he became a man who fixed plumbing, installed ceiling fans, and took on manual labor to support his children. But Marcus always told Ava a phrase she knew by heart. "We may be broke, but we are not broken. We may be poor, but we will never give up." And what about Zara Hale? That name echoed in Marcus's mind like an unanswered question. He remembered her bright but quiet smile when she spoke to Ava, the way she stood in his kitchen without showing any discomfort or distance. It wasn't the demeanor of a woman accustomed to a life of luxury. There was something in her eyes, a sadness that was hard to conceal. And perhaps her past is just as full of dark memories as his. Zara grew up in a trailer park in suburban North Carolina. Her mother worked 2 jobs, waitressing the night shift and cleaning the morning shift. Her father left when Zara was 6 years old. The adults in the neighborhood often argued, drank alcohol, and the air was thick with police sirens blaring in the freezing cold. Zara grew up amidst arguments, the sound of beer cans falling onto thin wooden floors and the noise of trucks passing by in the middle of the night. But she refused to accept her fate. She excelled in her studies, worked part-time from the age of 14, saved every penny for books, applied for scholarships, and did everything she could to break free from the life she didn't choose. When she said she wanted to study business, her career counselor said, "You should be more realistic. Almost none of the kids from Trailer Park ever get out of that loop." Zara didn't answer, but in her heart, she vowed to prove them wrong. She went to university on a scholarship, graduated at the top of her class, and then worked for a major technology company. At 28, Zara founded Hale Dynamics. At 31, she became one of the youngest female CEOs to be featured on Forbes. A journey that seemed perfect, until she realized she had successfully built it brick by brick with loneliness. She didn't trust anyone. She didn't rely on anyone. She no longer had feelings for anyone. Her world consisted of meetings, numbers, and bright white computer screens. No family, no close friends, no one to call when night fell and the penthouse apartment felt overwhelmingly empty. Zara became strong but withdrawn, successful but tough as steel. And that loneliness lasted for years, like a silent pain. Last night, when the SUV lost control and plunged into the ditch, in the moment she saw sparks flying from the engine, Zara thought it might be the last moment of her life. And when Marcus broke through the glass to rescue her, the warmth of his arms enveloped the biting cold of the storm. Zara knew she had never been rescued like that before, not because she was a CEO, not because she was rich, because she was a person in distress. Someone Marcus didn't know the name of, didn't know the identity of, but he still rushed to help. Perhaps that's why this morning, standing in the kitchen wearing his shirt, Zara looked at the little house with an expression she didn't recognize. A touch of peace, a touch of envy, a touch of, longing for something she'd never experienced before. Marcus looked at his shirt still draped over the chair. Suddenly, he felt breathless. It wasn't because of Zara's presence. It was because of her last words before she left. "Last night, I wasn't the only one rescued." Those words touched a deep corner within him, a corner he thought he had locked away since the day he was forced out of the company he himself had built. Marcus leaned his hands on the sink. He felt that truth was more terrifying than any storm. Because there are storms outside, and there are storms that live on forever in people's hearts. That afternoon passed in a silence Marcus couldn't quite name. He tried to focus on the chores around the house, tightening a loose screw on the sink faucet, checking the ventilation ducts, replacing the flickering light bulb on the front door. The familiar tasks, the things he did every week, without ever thinking much about them. But today every action felt heavy, because in every moment his mind kept returning to the image of Zara standing in the kitchen this morning. His shirt, that gaze, that voice, and her last words, like a ripple deep within still water. "Last night, I wasn't the only one rescued." That sentence kept lingering in his mind. Marcus felt as if something inside him had been touched, something he had kept hidden for a long time ever since he left the company he himself founded, a part of him he hadn't dared to confront. Late in the afternoon, Ava was sitting doing her homework when Marcus turned on the TV as background music. He didn't intend to watch the news. He just needed the noise to alleviate his feeling of emptiness. But just seconds later, the sound from the TV made him freeze. Breaking news. Zara CEO Hale has reappeared at the Hale Dynamics office following last night's accident. Marcus spun around. He thought he'd misheard. The screen displayed an image of a tall glass building, its elegant facade bathed in the afternoon sunlight. In front of the building, dozens of reporters crowded together, their microphones pointed in the same direction. The limousine door opened, and Zara stepped out. But this isn't the Zara of the morning in the Riverstone block kitchen. This is Zara Hale, the woman in a crisp white suit, her hair perfectly styled in a bun, striding confidently through the crowd as if she were born to stand in the spotlight. Marcus remained motionless. The reporter's voice rang out. "Zara Hale, CEO of Hale Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing technology companies in America." Ava looked up from her notebook. "Daddy, that's the girl from this morning, is she?" That famous Marcus didn't answer. He was trying to comprehend something he was completely unprepared for. He looked at the screen. Zara, appearing both powerful and lonely at the same time, was answering questions from reporters. "Heard you survived a serious crash last night. Did someone help you?" Zara looked directly into the camera. At that very moment, Marcus sensed something very strange in her eyes. Another reporter asked loudly, "Is it true that a local resident saved your life? Do you want to share that person's identity?" The whole crowd turned toward Zara, and Zara just smiled slightly, very gently, but enough to bring everything to a moment of calm. "He doesn't want attention," she said slowly, enunciating each word clearly. "But I will say this, he is a truly kind person, a quality that I believe cannot be bought at any price." Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. Another reporter chimed in, "He refused your financial compensation. Is that true?" Zara bowed her head slightly. "Yes, and that made me realize that there are still people in this world who help others only for the right reason, not for profit, not for fame." She paused for a second, her eyes glistening in the light. "If he's watching this, I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for remembering that we still have humanity in this fast-paced world." Marcus stood motionless in front of the TV. He felt as if the thick, invisible wall around his heart had just been shattered by a simple sentence. Ava tugged at her father's shirt in surprise. "Daddy, are you the one she was talking about?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Probably." Ava jumped up excitedly. "Wow, is she really the CEO? She looks just like the people in the magazines. My teacher showed me." Marcus didn't reply anymore. He was looking at Zara on the screen as if he were looking at a completely different person. She wasn't the tired woman who lay in his bed last night. She wasn't the calm woman wearing his shirt making coffee this morning. It's Zara Hale, a face that appears on Forbes, the woman who signed contracts Marcus only read about in newspapers, the leader of a technology company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Marcus took a small step back. It felt as if the world was splitting in two. On one side was the simple life he was living on, the other was Zara's world so far away he couldn't reach it. He turned off the TV, not because he hated it, but because His heart needed silence. Ava tugged at his sleeve. "Do you think she'll come back, Dad?" Marcus shook his head slightly, then nodded again. He wasn't sure himself. She needed help last night. She needed rest this morning. And after that, she has the whole world to worry about. Ava tilted her head. But she said thank you. A genuine thank you. Marcus turned to look at the front door. In that moment, he felt a vague sadness, a feeling of both loss and gratitude. He didn't save Zara in exchange for anything, but the fact that she was one of the most powerful women in America made that simple morning feel unreal, like a fleeting dream, like something that didn't belong in his life. As night fell after putting Ava to bed, Marcus sat alone on the couch. The only sounds in the room were the ticking of the wall clock and the lingering warmth of the afternoon. He looked at his shirt, the one Zara had worn, still neatly hung on the back of the chair. He reached out and gently touched the sleeve. For the first time in years, his heart trembled slightly. Not because of love, not because of desire, but for the first time, he felt like he was being seen again. Not as a black man cast out of a company, not as a tenant in a rundown neighborhood, but as a human being of value. And that scared Marcus, because when a person has lived in darkness for too long, the light can sometimes be the thing that makes them stumble the most. 3 days had passed since the morning Zara left the small house in Riverstone Block. 3 days Marcus tried to live as if nothing had changed. He still wakes up at 6 in the morning, makes breakfast for Ava, takes the kids to school, and returns to take on odd repair jobs around the neighborhood. In the evening, he still sits and redoes his job applications. Resumes he's probably sent to nearly 20 companies without receiving a single response. Everything remains the same. But Marcus is not the same as before. Or perhaps he was just trying to convince himself of it. Because during those 3 days, every time he turned on the TV, he saw Zara's face on the financial news or talk show. The media called her the Iron Woman, an icon of independence, and the most powerful CEO under 35. And the woman wearing his shirt and standing in the kitchen that morning had become almost someone else. On the 3rd day, a light rain fell over the city. Not as heavy as the storm the night before, but enough to paint the sky a silvery gray. Marcus was called in by Ava's school to inspect an old leaking pipe in the teacher's room. He rolled up his sleeves, grabbed his familiar toolbox, and tried to concentrate. But throughout the repair, Zara's voice kept echoing in his head, every word, every phrase impossible to erase. Especially that sentence. Last night, I wasn't the only one saved. He didn't understand why it bothered him so much. When Marcus finished packing up his tools and stepped out onto the schoolyard, the rain had just stopped. The children were playing under the shelters, laughing and chatting excitedly. Ava saw her father and waved, causing Marcus to smile slightly. An ordinary afternoon, relaxed, peaceful. Until the low, gentle sound of an engine echoed from the school gate. Marcus looked up. A gleaming black sedan tinted windows, its tires spotless despite the wet road. The car slowed down, its turn signal came on, and then stopped right next to the small parking lot where Marcus was standing. Marcus felt his throat go dry. It couldn't be. She couldn't. The back door opened, and Zara stepped down. This isn't the Zara version on TV with her white suit and the glamour of the business world. Today she's wearing a long, cream-colored trench coat, her hair neatly tied back and minimal makeup. She's both simple and sophisticated, powerful and very human. The entire schoolyard fell silent. Parents turned to look. Some teachers were whispering. The children stopped playing and gaped. Zara walked straight towards Marcus. Her gait was calm. No hurry. No hesitation. There was a clear determination in every step. Ava ran and hugged Marcus's legs, whispering, "Daddy, she's here." Marcus placed his hand on his son's shoulder. He watched Zara approach his heart, filled with unanswered questions. Finally, she stopped just a few steps away from him. Her eyes met his without avoiding his gaze, without concealment, only a sincerity rarely seen in leaders like her. "Marcus Johnson," Zara said, her voice warm but serious. "We need to talk." Marcus straightened his back. "If it's about the check from the other day, then—" "It's not about that," Zara interrupted softly but firmly. "It's about something else." She opened her bag and took out a phone. On the screen was a video from a traffic camera showing Marcus rushing into the wrecked SUV and carrying her out in the middle of the storm. "You saved my life," her voice trailed off, "and I didn't know how to thank you properly." Marcus pursed his lips. You owe me nothing. Zara took a deep breath. It's not because I owe you anything. It's because I appreciate what you did. A wave of subtle yet profound emotion caused the surrounding space to freeze. Marcus didn't know how to react when those words were spoken right in the middle of the schoolyard in front of so many people. Zara looked over at Ava, who was clinging tightly to her father's arm. Zara's gaze softened as if something inside her was being pulled out from beneath her usual cold exterior. Ava, right. Zara bent down, smiling gently. Thank you for letting your father help me that night. Ava smiled brightly. My dad is always helping people. Zara smiled back, but her eyes welled up with tears. It was a brief moment, but Marcus noticed it clearly. It seems like she hasn't received a smile like this in years. Zara stood up straight and turned to Marcus. There's something I need to tell you, and I want to tell it where you can't hide. Marcus frowned. I wasn't hiding. Zara looked deep into his eyes. Marcus, I've bought Riverstone block. The atmosphere around Marcus seemed to drop in an instant. What? What are you buying? Your entire neighborhood, Zara said, as if it were the most obvious fact. And the entire building you're renting? Marcus felt his blood boiling. Are you kidding me? Zara shook her head. I'm not joking. I bought it because I want to completely renovate the area, make it a more livable place, and I want you to lead that project. Marcus took a step back. No, you can't interfere in my life like that. Zara took another step forward. Marcus, I did this because you understand that community. You grew up in that kind of environment. You once led a company. You've seen injustice. Marcus clenched his fist. Are you trying to atone for your mistakes? With money? No, Zara said immediately, her voice deeper and slightly trembling. I'm trying to correct something I accidentally did wrong. Marcus frowned. I don't understand. Zara looked down at the ground for a second, then looked up. Her eyes were moist, but no tears fell. She spoke in a voice that brought the entire schoolyard to a standstill. I had forgotten how poor I used to be. I had forgotten what it felt like to be looked down upon because of my background. I had forgotten that people like you still exist. People who help others, not for profit, not for fame, simply because it's the right thing to do. And that night, she swallowed softly. He reminded me of who I used to be. Those words cut a deep gash in Marcus's heart. Not painful, but insightful. Zara provided a file. At the top, it read, Community Renewal Project Lead Advisor Marcus Johnson. This is something I want to do with you. Not because you saved me, but because you're the only one I trust who can do this the right way. Marcus said nothing. All his life he had longed to change something bigger than himself. But he had also been deprived of that right by those in more power. Now Zara, a woman at the pinnacle of power, is offering him that opportunity. Not out of pity, not out of debt, but out of respect. That's what made Marcus not know how to breathe. They both stood there in the middle of the schoolyard amidst the whispers and curious glances of everyone around them. Ava pulled his arm. Daddy, will you help her? Marcus looked at his daughter. Then at Zara. Then at the sky, which was changing from gray to a soft pink after the rain. He felt it clearly this was a moment that could change his life once again. But this time he had to choose very carefully. The schoolyard seemed to hold its breath. Every gaze, every breath, every whisper was directed towards Marcus and Zara, two people standing at opposite ends of the world, yet drawn into the same strange moment. Marcus took the file Zara handed him, but he didn't open it. His fingers trembled slightly on the edge of the cover, not from fear, but because it was too sudden, too big, too incongruous with the quiet life he had confined himself to for so many years. He took a deep breath. You bought the entire Riverstone block, just to get me involved in this project. Zara didn't shy away. No, I bought it because I saw it last year. I wanted to renovate it, but didn't know where to start. After the accident, I knew I couldn't delay any longer. She paused for a second, then added, and yes, I want you to lead the project. Marcus shook his head, looking down at the ground. You don't understand. I'm just, don't say an ordinary person, Zara interrupted, her voice heavy with weight. You used to lead a tech company. You understand management, you understand processes, you understand how people work, and most importantly, you understand what the people of Riverstone need because you live among them. Marcus gave a bitter smile. That was years ago. Now I just fix pipes and install ceiling fans. Zara took a step forward, her gaze resolute but not cold. Marcus, you're not the person you're working for. You're the man behind it all. A man who's been knocked down by the world but still retains his decency. I need someone like that. Marcus remained silent. A gentle breeze swept across the schoolyard, carrying the scent of damp earth after the rain. Ava clutched his sleeve, blinking her eyes as if waiting for an answer. Inside, Marcus was an invisible battle. On one side is his wounded pride repeatedly hurt. On the other is the dream he once buried, believing he no longer had a chance to pursue it. He clearly remembers the day he left his old company. The feeling of being led out of his own meeting room, the pitying glances, the polite but icy words. We are looking for a different leadership profile. Those words remain deeply embedded in his heart, like an unhealed scar. Now Zara, a woman of real power and real wealth, stands before him and says, I want you to lead. Marcus didn't know what to feel. Pride, or fear of failing again. He looked at Zara for a long time. What do you know about me that you would trust me? Zara looked him straight in the eye without blinking. I know enough. Enough, Marcus chuckled slightly. You met me for just one night and wore my shirt for just one morning. Zara took another half step. No. I know enough because I've seen you act when no one's watching. That's how you judge a person. The words made Marcus's chest tighten. A teacher walked past trying to pretend not to look, but clearly curious. A few parents whispered to each other, Isn't that the CEO of Hale Dynamics? Who is she here to see? That black man must be... Marcus felt every gaze like tiny needles. He was used to the judgmental stares of others, but today he didn't want Ava to see her father standing under those scrutinizing eyes. He bent down and said to his daughter, Ava, you go to class first. I need to talk for a bit. Ava nodded, but before leaving, she leaned close to her father's ear and whispered, Daddy, I think she's sad, but when she looks at you, she seems happier. Marcus choked up. He stroked his daughter's head, watching Ava run into the classroom. Now only Marcus and Zara remained in the schoolyard, facing each other in the dim afternoon light. Marcus spoke slowly, very slowly. Do you know what I lost before? When I was CEO, Zara looked at him, her eyes downcast. I guess it's not just about work. Yes, Marcus took a deep breath. I've lost faith. I've lost faith that someone like me could be in a position to make such important decisions. Zara clenched her fists, a small gesture, but Marcus noticed. A person who always controlled her emotions like her only did that when something struck her heart. She said softly, I understand. Marcus looked at her skeptically. You understand? Zara nodded. I was also kicked out of my first project as a manager. Not because I was incompetent, but because people didn't believe a girl who grew up in a trailer park could manage a team of engineers. Her voice choked up slightly. I vowed that when I had the power, I would give opportunities to truly capable people, not just those with good backgrounds. That statement made Marcus look up. For the first time, he saw Zara not just as a powerful CEO, but as a person with real wounds. Marcus, Zara said, her voice deep but soft. I don't want to use money to help you. I want to use opportunity. Marcus, be quiet. He listened to each word like a beat in his heart. If you refuse, I will still renovate Riverstone, Zara continued. But I won't have anyone to guarantee it helps the right people in the right way. I don't want this project to become empty PR. I need people who have lived in poverty, who have lost their careers, but who still retain their dignity. A breeze swept by. Marcus lowered his head, his eyes fixed on the wet ground. He said softly, Are you sure you want to entrust something so big to me, someone who's been kicked out of his own company? Zara moved closer, just a step away from him. Marcus Johnson, her voice firm. If you don't deserve a second chance, then nobody in the world does. Those words pierced the deepest part of Marcus. Not pain, but an overwhelming sense of acknowledgement. Something he hadn't heard from anyone in years. He closed his eyes for a second, enough for his heart to soften, enough for the small glimmer of hope he had kept buried for so long to resurface. When he opened his eyes, Marcus spoke slowly, almost in a whisper. If I accept, everything will change. That's right, Zara replied without hesitation, but sometimes change is the only way to live again. Marcus stood still. The wind blew through his shirt. The setting sun cast long shadows of the two of them across the schoolyard. Finally, he said, Need some time. Zara nodded. I'm not in a hurry. I just want you to think with your heart, not with fear. She took a step back. Tomorrow I'll send you the detailed project outline. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. Marcus nodded slightly. Zara turned and walked towards her car. But before opening the door, she turned back, her eyes strangely deep and warm. Marcus, thank you for not abandoning me during that stormy night. I hope you won't abandon yourself this time. The car door closed. The sedan drove away as light and smooth as a breeze. Marcus stood there for a long time. He didn't speak. He couldn't think. He just felt his heart beating to a rhythm he hadn't felt in years, the rhythm of hope. That evening, when Zara visited Ava's school, Marcus was almost completely silent during dinner. Ava chattered on about what happened in class, about the craft assignment she had just completed, about her new friend, and about how the teacher had let the whole class go outside to play because the rain had stopped. But to each of Ava's questions, Marcus only responded with gentle smiles and slow nods. It wasn't that he wasn't listening. Rather, his mind was being pulled in, dragged down, and swirled around by something else. The file Zara gave him on campus was an ordinary stack of papers, but it felt as heavy as a mountain. Ava ran into the study, leaving Marcus alone at the dining table. The small house was bathed in the warm glow of the old ceiling lamp, a light warm enough to bring him peace, but dark enough to complicate his thoughts. He looked around the living room where he had lived for the past 4 years, where he sat at night, hunched over, worrying about rent, where Ava ran around whenever she played superhero, saving the world, where he used to sit and sigh alone after receiving his 17th job rejection email. There were times when Marcus wondered if he was truly living, or merely existing. He opened the file. Inside were drawings, surveys, financial plans, and a handwritten letter from Zara. Marcus, I didn't choose you out of pity. I chose you because I believe you can help change this community in a way that I, who stand too high above, can no longer see. Reading that, Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He closed his eyes. A flood of memories pulled him back to his time in Atlanta, the period when he stood on stage speaking to hundreds of people, the lights shining brightly, the applause echoing. He used to be a man of influence, a respected man, a man with leadership abilities. But ever since being fired from his old company, Marcus has built a thick shell around himself, no longer expecting anything big. That shell helped him survive, but it also made him smaller. Now Zara is trying to break through that shell, not with money, not with power, but with recognition, something Marcus hasn't heard for 4 years. He put the letter down, then leaned back in his chair. In that moment, a question suddenly arose, clear and painful as a needle. Why am I so scared? Darkness was falling. Marcus stepped out onto the porch, looking at the Riverstone Block neighborhood bathed in the soft yellow light of the streetlights. This neighborhood was old, very old, peeling plaster, crumbling fences, the smell of engine oil from the garage at the end of the street, the quiet squabbles from the second-floor apartment every evening. But this was where Mr. Johnson raised him, where he played baseball with old wooden bats, where he chased the neighborhood kids, where he promised his mother that one day he would make it a better place. That promise vanished long ago, the same day he lost his CEO position and his faith in himself. Now Zara is reviving that promise. In a subtle yet powerful way, Marcus wondered. If I don't take this opportunity, what am I teaching Ava? Is giving up normal? Can't black people hold important positions? Does past failure mean a closed future? No, that's not something he wants to leave to his daughter. He sat down on the steps, head bowed, hands clasped together. The night wind blew, carrying the lingering scent of earth and rain. He let his mind wander back to the wounds of the past. The day he was fired, he stood by a window large enough to see the entire state of Georgia illuminated by the sunset. At that moment, his co-founder, a former close friend, told him, "Marcus, you built the foundation, but the company now needs someone who can talk to investors. And you know they want a different image, another image." From that moment on, Marcus never looked at that friend again. That fall hurt so much that Marcus vowed to himself he would never let anyone bring him down again. He held back. He held back his dreams. He held back everything that could make him hope for something great. Because expectations lead to disappointment. Living quietly is safer. But now, Zara is knocking on the door of that past and opening up a new future. Around 8 o'clock in the evening, Ava stepped out onto the porch wearing a small hoodie. "Daddy, what are you thinking about?" Marcus looked at his son, his smile softening. "I'm thinking about something big, really big." Ava sat down next to him, resting her head on her father's shoulder. "I saw Zara smile at you today, Dad. She's nothing like the person on TV." "How are they different?" Ava frowned thoughtfully. "It's like she's forgotten she's important. Like she's just Zara." Marcus chuckled softly. "Children always notice things that adults miss." "Daddy, do you like her?" Marcus paused for a moment. "What are you asking?" Ava rested her chin on her hand. "She makes Dad think more than usual, and he looks at her like he looks at Christmas lights. Not with expectation, but with warmth." Marcus fell silent. That statement simple, true, and it touched the deepest part of him. He looked at his daughter, then hugged her. "Ava, do you know what scares your dad the most?" Ava shook her head. "I'm afraid to believe in anything again, because last time, I lost everything." Ava hugged him tighter. "But Dad didn't lose me." Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "That's right, he still had Ava. And because of Ava, he couldn't live like a shadow forever." Ava whispered, "If you're scared, Dad, take it slow. But don't give up, because I think you're stronger than you think." That statement was like flipping a switch in Marcus's heart. He opened his eyes. Everything suddenly became clear. He's not just facing a career choice. He's facing an opportunity to rediscover himself. It wasn't Marcus, the one who was eliminated. It was Marcus, the one who once led, the one who dared to dream, the one who had a vision. Perhaps Zara didn't come to change his life. Perhaps she only came to remind him that he still had a life to live. Marcus looked at the night sky, seeing the clouds dissipating to reveal a few stars. He stood up. "Go to bed first, son. I need to write a few things." Ava smiled, hugged her dad, and then ran into the house. Marcus walked into the living room. He placed the file on the table. He sat down. He turned to the first page, and for the first time in 4 years, his hands trembled, not from fear, but from nervousness. He opened his old laptop. The screen lit up. A new email page opened. He took a deep breath, then slowly typed each word. "Zara, I've thought about it, and I have an answer." He paused. He stared at the words for a long time. Then he pressed send. At that very moment, Marcus Johnson knew his life was about to turn a new page. The next morning, Marcus woke up earlier than usual, not because of the alarm clock, not because Ava ran into his room demanding to make pancakes, but because deep down he had a strange feeling. It wasn't the familiar morning worry, not the empty feeling of a man accustomed to disappointment, but something else, like the first step after a long period of pain. Hope. A small hope. But it's real. He looked at the email inbox on his old laptop. The small checkmark next to the word sent was still there. He has already sent the decision. He didn't know how Zara would react. He didn't know if he was doing the right thing. But for the first time in 4 years, Marcus found himself choosing to move forward into the future rather than just standing still and watching it slip away. Ava woke up, rubbed her eyes, pulled on her hoodie, and jumped onto her dad. "Daddy, you're smiling today," Marcus chuckled. "Dad." Just feels relieved. "Did Dad email Zara yet?" Ava asked, her voice soft but curious like any 7-year-old. "Okay." Marcus stroked his son's hair. "Now we just have to wait for her response." Ava nodded and pulled her father to the kitchen because she was hungry. The atmosphere in the small house was warmer than usual, even though a thin layer of mist still covered the outside. Around 10 a.m., while Marcus was repairing an old wooden table in the living room, his phone rang. A new email. He wiped his hands on his jeans and turned on the computer. Email from Zara Hale. Subject, Marcus. "I've read your reply." His heart was pounding. He clicked. "Just one short line. I may need to see you sooner than planned. I'm on my way." Marcus jumped to his feet. Ava ran out. "What's wrong, Daddy?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He opened the door and stepped out onto the porch, looking at the old, worn street of Riverstone Block. Everything was as usual, the smell of coffee from the corner shop, the sound of delivery trucks, the barking of the neighbor's dog. But Marcus sensed something was about to change, something big. About 30 minutes later, a familiar sound echoed from the end of the street. The engine hummed softly, elegantly. The familiar black sedan appeared, gliding slowly past the old houses, like a piece of the wealthy world entering a poor neighborhood. The car stopped in front of Marcus's house. The back door was open. Zara stepped down, not wearing the suit she wore to the office, not wearing the long coat she wore to school. Today, she's wearing a simple sweater, dark jeans, and her hair tied back low, a more approachable version of Zara Hale. Marcus opened the gate and stood still waiting. He didn't know what was coming. Zara stepped into the yard, her eyes scanning the small house, then settling on Marcus. "Thank you for replying to the email," she said softly, yet with her characteristic firmness. Marcus nodded. "I guess you want to know what I chose." Zara tilted her head slightly. "I know." Marcus blinked. "You—" "No." Zara held up her phone. "Your email wasn't long, but it was enough for me to understand." Marcus paused slightly. He remembered writing only Zara. "I've thought about it. And I have an answer. He hasn't said yes yet. Nor has he said no." Zara took another step, getting closer to him. "Marcus, I didn't come here to pressure you." Her voice was softer than usual. "I came to clarify something that you may not fully understand." Marcus crossed his arms, trying to remain calm. What Zara looked into his eyes for a long time before speaking. "Marcus, I don't just want you involved in the project. I want you to lead the entire Riverstone block renovation plan." The blood in Marcus's veins seemed to stop for a moment. He thought he'd misheard. "You want me to be the lead of the entire project?" Zara nodded without hesitation. "Yes." Marcus chuckled softly, a smile, a mixture of confusion and skepticism. "Do you know how big that project is?" "I know," Zara replied, unwavering. "And I know you can do it. Not just because you have leadership experience, but because you understand this community from its roots." Marcus took a deep breath, feeling everything spinning. He wasn't used to being trusted like this, not used to someone placing their trust in him before he dared to trust himself. He looked around the small house, then at Zara. "Are you sure I've failed once before?" Zara moved closer, her gaze so deep and sincere that Marcus didn't dare look at her for long. "We all fail, Marcus," she said slowly, "but not everyone gets back up with a kind heart." Those words pierced Marcus like a ray of light shining through the cracks in a man who had already been broken. A moment later, Zara opened her bag and took out a new stack of documents. "Before you answer, there's something you need to know." She handed him the documents. Marcus opened them. Inside is a copy of the contract for the acquisition of the entire Riverstone block. And right below the first page was a line that sent a chill down Marcus's spine. "Purpose of acquisition to lay the groundwork for a community recovery project. Proposed leader Marcus Johnson." Marcus looked up. "Zara, did you include my name in the contract?" Zara nodded. "I want the board to see clearly that I believe you. And if they object, they'll have to object to me first." Marcus took a step back. Not out of fear, but because he was moved. He hadn't seen anyone fight for him like that since the incident at his old company. He sighed softly, almost laughing out loud in surprise. "Do you know you're putting yourself at risk for me?" Zara looked him straight in the eyes. "Marcus, there are two kinds of risk in life. One is the risk of blind ambition. The other is the risk of believing in what is right." Her gaze softened. "You're the right person." Marcus was speechless for a few seconds. He stood in his yard feeling as if the world had slowed down. Not because of the project, not because of the career opportunity, but because of the recognition he thought he would never get again. After a few minutes of silence, Marcus whispered Zara. "I've been afraid for a long time." "I know," she replied immediately. "I'm afraid of standing up only to fall again. I know. I'm afraid Ava will see her father fail again. I know. I'm afraid." Marcus paused, his voice lowered. "I'm not worthy." Zara took a step closer, very close to him. "So let me say this." She looked at him so intensely that Marcus felt as if she were seeing right through the shell he had built up over the past 4 years. "Marcus Johnson, you've deserved it for a long time. You just forgot." Her voice trembled slightly. "Let me remind you." The wind blew through. The scent of rain lingered in the air. The whole neighborhood seemed to fall silent listening to those words. Marcus bowed his head. He felt a slight stinging sensation in his eyes, something he hadn't allowed himself to do for a very long time. At that moment, Ava ran to the door. "Daddy, Zara, are you two talking?" Marcus quickly wiped his eyes and turned back. Zara smiled warmly. "We're starting something new." Ava tilted her head. New things are good things, right? Zara nodded. Yes, very good. Marcus bent down to hug his daughter. Then he stood up straight, looked at Zara, his eyes no longer trembling as before. Zara, I have the answer. At that moment, Zara held her breath. The whole neighborhood seemed to hold its breath with her. Marcus took a deep breath. I agree. But he looked straight into her eyes. We have to do this the right way. For the community, for Ava, and for the man I want to get back. Zara flashed a smile, not the radiant smile seen in magazine photos, but a genuine, very real smile. Marcus, thank you. At that moment in the old neighborhood, in that small house between two people burdened with wounds, a new beginning officially commenced. Marcus's first morning as head of the Riverstone Block renovation project was unlike any morning in the past 4 years. He woke up early, not because he was worried, but because he had a reason to get up. Ava was both thrilled and proud, running around the house saying that her dad is about to work with a famous CEO. Marcus laughed and told his daughter to tone it down, but he couldn't hide the quiet joy in his heart either. After dropping Ava off at school, Marcus returned home and changed into his finest shirt, not the Zara shirt he'd worn the day before. He put that one away as a gentle reminder of that life-changing morning. He looked in the mirror. The man he saw was no longer the defeated man, nor was he the CEO of many years ago. That's Marcus, getting up again. 9:15 a.m. The black Zara sedan stopped in front of his house as punctual as a Swiss clock. The door opened. Zara stepped out. Today she was wearing a sharp navy suit over a white shirt, elegant yet simple, strong yet approachable. When she saw Marcus, she paused for a second. You look perfect for the new role. Her voice was soft but so sincere that Marcus didn't dare breathe too heavily. Marcus smiled. I tried not to embarrass you. Zara frowned in a rare, mischievous way. You want to embarrass me? That's unlikely. They both laughed. The moment was as light as a morning breeze, but hidden beneath it was something they hadn't dared to name. Hale Dynamics headquarters are located in the heart of the city, a 47-story glass building that reflects light like a silver spire against the sky. Marcus stood beneath the building, gazing up at its entire height, feeling as if he were about to step into a world not meant for him. Zara looked at him. If you're worried, just say so. I'm standing right here. Marcus didn't look at her, but his voice was low and sincere. I'm not worried, just catching my breath. Zara nodded, understanding better than anyone. We breathed together. They both inhaled, then exhaled, like two people preparing for a battle without saying a word. Inside the building, the atmosphere was completely different from Riverstone Block. Cold. So clean that there wasn't a sound. Employees in business attire moved quickly, their faces serious. Everything operated precisely like a well-oiled machine. Marcus walked beside Zara, feeling like a man in worn-out shoes entering a luxurious ballroom. But Zara didn't let him feel out of place. She gently placed her hand on his elbow as a soft reminder. You're not alone. It was just a simple gesture, but it made Marcus stand straighter and walk more confidently. The board meeting took place on the 32nd floor in a spacious meeting room with a long glass table, elegant black leather chairs, and panoramic windows overlooking the city. 7 people sat there. 7 faces, cold and sharp like financial reports. Zara went in first. Marcus followed. The atmosphere changed instantly. Some people looked at Marcus with judgmental eyes. Others were clearly suspicious. A silver-haired man scrutinized him from head to toe with a somewhat disdainful gaze. Zara spoke first. Thank you all for being here. Today, I would like to introduce the person who will be leading the Riverstone Block restoration project. She turned to Marcus. Marcus Johnson. Marcus stood straight and nodded in greeting. That was it. No lengthy speeches, no boasting, but that wasn't enough to ease the tension in the room. One board member, Miss Reed, folded her arms. Zara, we still don't understand why you chose him. This project is worth tens of millions of dollars. We need someone with senior management experience. Zara looked directly at Mrs. Reed. He used to be the CEO. Another man chuckled. And that company failed. Marcus squeezed her hand slightly. Zara immediately retorted, it's not because of his abilities. It's because of discrimination. I won't overlook that. The atmosphere in the room changed noticeably. The gray-haired man leaned his hands on the table, his voice sharp as a knife. We need proof that Mr. Johnson deserves this position. We can't just rely on your personal assessment. Marcus took a deep breath. Previously, he would have remained silent. He would have succumbed to that contempt. But today, he's no longer the man who avoids the issue. He took half a step forward. His voice was deep, clear, and slow, typical of someone who had stood before hundreds of investors. If you want to know if I deserve it, look at what I've overcome, not in the financial report, but in real life. The room fell silent. Marcus continued. I understand what the people of Riverstone need because I live among them. I understand the harshness of poverty, the impasse of discrimination, and the despair of having no one believe in you. No resume can teach that. The gray-haired man frowned. Are you saying emotions will govern this project? Marcus shook his head. I said that people will manage the project, not the numbers. A long silence followed. Then, Zara stood beside Marcus, her voice firm. And I will take responsibility for this choice. If Marcus fails, I will bear all the consequences. The room almost shook. One council member leaned back in his chair and said softly but clearly, She has never bet her career on anyone. Zara immediately replied, Yes. But this time, it's worth it. No one dared say anything more. After a few minutes of tense discussion and internal voting, the chairman of the board stood up. A majority agrees. Marcus Johnson will lead the Riverstone block restoration project. Marcus breathed a sigh of relief, not outwardly, but Zara saw it. She tilted her head slightly as if saying silently, See, I told you could do it. As they both stepped out of the meeting room, the glass door closing behind them, Zara let Marcus go half a step ahead. In the long corridor, sunlight shone on the white stone floor. The whole space suddenly felt as light as a morning after a storm. Zara spoke first. You did a great job. Marcus chuckled softly. I'm just telling the truth, and sometimes the truth is the most powerful thing. They slowed down. Marcus glanced at her. You've always trusted me that much. Zara didn't look at him, but her voice lowered. From the moment you carried me out of the burning car. Marcus stopped walking. Zara stopped too. They both stood in the middle of the wide corridor, the light casting two parallel shadows. That night, Zara whispered. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know my status, my money, my reputation. He only knew I was someone who needed help. Marcus looked into her eyes. Saving people is the right thing to do. Zara shook her head and stepped closer to him. No. Being right is one thing, but you did it from the heart. And that heart, I trust. Marcus felt his heart flutter, not strongly, not hastily, but deeply. At the same time, an employee walked past and bowed to Zara. Both of them took a step back, maintaining their distance, but their eyes never left each other. When he reached the main hall, Marcus looked around the vast building. He said, as if exhaling, I never thought I'd come back to a place like this. Zara replied, Well, you're back now. Not as a victim, but as a game changer. Marcus chuckled. You always say things that make it hard for me to refuse. Zara tilted her head, then don't refuse. They stepped out the door together. The midday breeze blew, carrying the scent of coffee and the heat from the sidewalk. Zara opened the car door. Marcus, tomorrow we're starting a meeting with the technical team, the finance team, and the community representatives. I want you to lead the meeting. Marcus froze. Right from the first day, Zara smiled slightly. So they know who the leader is. Marcus took a deep breath and nodded. Zara got into the car, but before closing the door, she said, Marcus, I'm so proud of you. The door closed. The car drove away. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, the sunlight falling on his shoulders, as if to remind him a new chapter has begun. And he, the man who had once fallen, is writing that chapter with his own hands. On the first morning, Marcus walked into the meeting as the Riverstone Block project leader. The sky was a soft gray, and the wind rustled through the trees as a reminder the real journey had begun. Marcus woke up early to get ready. He made coffee leaning against the kitchen counter, watching the steam rise. Ava sat at the table eating cereal and drawing something. Daddy, you're going to have a meeting with a lot of people today, right? Ava asked without looking up. Marcus nodded. That's right. There are a lot of people. Are you worried, Dad? Marcus thought to himself. If Dad says he's not worried, he's probably lying. Ava looked at her father, tilting her head. But you still went. That means you're brave. Marcus chuckled softly but deeply. Ava's innocence was truly the medicine that helped him stay steady whenever he trembled. He bent down and kissed her forehead. "Thank you, my dear. I'll do my best." Ava raised her tiny fist in a cheering gesture. "Dad can do it." At Hale Dynamics headquarters, the meeting room today was even busier than yesterday's board meeting. About 30 people. The finance team, the engineering team, the planning team, the community representatives team, and a team. Marcus never imagined he'd have to work with the strategic communications department. Zara stood at the head of the table, her gaze confident but softening as she saw Marcus walk in. Everyone turned around. They didn't know much about him. They only knew that Zara had placed a bet on him, something that made them both curious and wary. Zara began by saying, "Thank you all for coming. Today we're starting the first phase of the project. And Marcus Johnson, who knows the Riverstone community better than anyone in this room, will be leading it." All eyes turned to Marcus. Each gaze was different: suspicion, curiosity, judgment, and a few genuinely wanting to listen. Marcus stepped forward. He took a deep breath, a long, slow one, and began. His voice was deep, clear, and unforced. "I'm not standing here to outline a far-fetched plan. I'm standing here because I was once a part of Riverstone Block. I know every house, every alley, every worry that the people there lived with every day." A few people nodded. Marcus continued, "This project is not just about changing infrastructure. It's about changing hope. It's about showing people that they deserve to live in a safe, clean community with a future." The atmosphere became tense. Marcus's confidence was boosted. He flipped to the first slide, a detailed assessment of the neighborhood's current state, which he had prepared all night. But as soon as he opened the second slide, a man from the technical team raised his hand. "Marcus, I respect your story. But have you ever managed a large-scale project after leaving your previous company?" That question was like a knife twisting into an old wound. Marcus stood still for a second. His heart sank slightly. Zara glanced over her eyes, clearly warning. But Marcus lifted his chin and replied in a calm voice, "Not yet. But my prior experience is enough to build a company's system from the ground up, and Riverstone is also a system. The only difference is that it's full of cracks, and I know how to see those cracks before anyone else." The room fell silent. The man paused, then said nothing more. Marcus continued his presentation. Each part he spoke was clear and factual, showing that he understood the issue from the perspective of the people, not just from a professional standpoint. But the more we talk, the more pressure there is. Cost charts, construction timelines, financial risks, legal hurdles. His head started to ache slightly. He's not the man of big meetings anymore. He's been away from that environment for too long. After a meeting that lasted nearly 2 hours, Zara quietly gestured for Marcus to accompany her out into the hallway. The moment the door closed, he breathed heavily, like someone who had just emerged from the water. Zara walked closer to him. "Are you all right?" Marcus nodded, but his eyes were tired. "Okay, just a bit too much going on at once." Zara stood beside her, saying nothing, just looking out the large glass window where the white light streamed in. After a moment, she said softly, "Marcus, you don't have to do everything in one day. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep going." Marcus smiled faintly, a smile that wasn't quite complete. "I'm just afraid I'll fail again." Zara looked at him, her gaze softening. "You're not the same man you were 4 years ago, and this time you're not alone." Marcus was silent, but his eyes softened. After lunch, Zara took Marcus to the 27th floor, where the Strategic Communications Department was located. "This department wants to interview you," Zara explained. Marcus frowned. "I didn't think this project was a PR campaign." "No," Zara replied quickly. "But they want to build a story to solicit support from the community and charities." Marcus sighed. "I don't like being in front of the camera." Zara smiled faintly. "I know. But sometimes the right story told the right way can save an entire community." Marcus didn't object anymore. The media room was brightly lit, cameras were set up, and microphones hung from the ceiling. A 3-person crew was getting ready. Marcus sat down in the chair in the middle of the room. It felt as if the light was shining into every crack in him. The young female reporter smiled and said, "Mr. Marcus, we just have a few questions. Please feel free to answer." Marcus nodded. "My first question," she said, "is why you want to lead the Riverstone Block project." Marcus opened his mouth, intending to reply with a complete sentence. But then he stopped. An image flashed through his mind. Ava sleeping on his shoulder as the rain leaked inside their house, her eyes filled with sadness at seeing her friends have playgrounds that she doesn't. He swallowed, then spoke slowly. Because I lived there, and I felt I didn't deserve to have any good things in life. I want other children not to grow up feeling that way. The whole room fell silent. The female reporter smiled genuinely, not in a professional way, but in a way that showed she was genuinely moved. Thank you. Marcus breathed a sigh of relief. A part of his fear dissipated a little. As evening fell, Marcus stood on the 27th floor balcony, gazing down at the vast city. In the distance to the west was Riverstone Block, the small neighborhood he called home. Zara walked out beside him. You did better today than you thought you would. Marcus looked down at his hands. I feel like I'm trying to hold on to an old man, to keep him from falling. Zara stood beside her. A gentle breeze blew, causing her hair to sway. Marcus, she said slowly, sometimes to move forward, you have to accept that you've fallen before. He looked up at her. That sentence, did you come up with it yourself or read it somewhere? Zara smiled. I figured it out. When I looked at you. Marcus chuckled, this time genuinely relieved. You always know how to say things that leave me speechless. Zara tilted her head. Then, let's not argue anymore. The two stood side by side without saying anything more. The atmosphere was quiet but not heavy. A gentle breeze blew like a promise that every step they took, however difficult, was going in the right direction. That evening, Marcus came home. Ava ran out and hugged him tightly. Daddy, did you win? Marcus chuckled, lifting the little girl up. Nobody won today. But Dad didn't lose. Ava nodded. That's good. Marcus held his child, feeling the small but significant warmth that was enough to dispel all the day's stress. While Ava slept, Marcus sat alone in the living room. The light shone on his face, revealing his weariness, but also reflecting something else. He's back, really. And although he was still very afraid, he didn't run anymore. He stood up, looked out the window toward the distant Riverstone Block, and then whispered as if making a promise to himself, I can do it. In the following weeks, the Riverstone Block project progressed slowly but steadily. Marcus was constantly in meetings, working with architects, engineers, environmental experts, and the legal department. The workload was so heavy that he would come home almost collapsing, but Ava would always run to hug him, giving him renewed energy. Zara was also closely involved, but unlike other CEOs, she didn't stand back and give orders. She went to the scene, walked on the rough roads, listened to children playing on the cracked ground, and looked at houses crumbling with time. She and Marcus always walked side by side, not because they needed to, but because they felt safe standing together. But as we got closer to the implementation phase, the contradictions became clearer. One Friday afternoon, the community representatives held a large meeting at the old community center, a red brick building with cracks in many places and water leaks in the ceiling. About 50 residents arrived, more than anyone had anticipated. Marcus stood before the meeting, a stack of documents in his hands. Zara stood beside him, her gaze calm but wary. The meeting started well. Marcus presented the revised plan. Zara spoke about funding and the commitment of support from Hale Dynamics. But just as he was about to move on to the next section, a man's voice spoke from the back row. He talks a good game. But all those beautiful plans? Can anyone guarantee we won't be evicted when the rent goes up? Marcus froze. That man, Mr. Harris, was about 50, had lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years. He was a man of influence. Marcus tried to keep his voice calm. We have no intention of pushing anyone out of the community. The project includes a rent retention program for existing residents. A woman chimed in. You speak so lightly. But the CEO standing next to him, has he ever lived here? Has he ever known what it feels like to have rain leaking into your bed? Has he ever worried about not having enough money to fix the roof? Zara straightened up. But Marcus gently raised his hand to stop her, indicating that he wanted to speak. She came here because she wanted to change that, Marcus said. The woman shook her head. Change for whom? For us, or for her company's reputation? The atmosphere in the room began to heat up. Whispers spread like wildfire. Zara stepped forward slightly. I understand everyone's concerns. I didn't grow up rich. I know, but she shook her head. No, I don't know. I'm the CEO. I have a chauffeur, a luxurious house. I don't live in a house with moldy walls and rusty pipes. Her voice was as sharp as a knife, and it struck Zara's weakest point, one she carried with her from childhood. Marcus noticed her shoulders tremble slightly. He stepped up to take her place. Yes, Zara doesn't live here, but she's the one who bought this whole area to protect everyone from another company that wants to turn it into a parking lot. Without her, Riverstone Block would be gone. The room buzzed with activity. Some fell silent, others remained dissatisfied. Then Mr. Harris stood up again. "Mr. Marcus, you're one of us." "But she's not. How can we be sure that once the project is finished, her company won't profit by driving up house prices to astronomical levels?" Before Marcus could answer, Zara stepped forward. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, and carried the weight of someone who had truly suffered. "Because I understand what it feels like to be abandoned." The room fell silent. Zara continued. "As a child, I lived with 5 different foster families in just 4 years. Nobody thought I would become anyone. No one wanted to take me in. Nobody believed I deserved to stay. Everyone was surprised." Zara had never spoken about this publicly. Marcus looked over. It was the first time he'd seen her reveal her past so candidly. "I bought Riverstone Block," Zara said, "not to make a profit. It's because I don't want any of the children here to feel like they don't belong." A long silence ensued. But then, from the corner of the room, a young woman suddenly stood up. "I know you," she pointed directly at Zara. "You're the one who bought the land north to build the shopping mall and then abandoned it halfway. We lived next to that construction site for 3 years, covered in dust, and your company hasn't even apologized. The atmosphere was explosive." Zara froze. Marcus looked over. Her expression changed in an instant. "Zara, what's going on?" Marcus whispered. Zara did not respond immediately. The shouts grew louder. "She's just like any other CEO. We don't believe her. She said she was doing it for the community last time, too." Zara took half a step back. Marcus could clearly see she was trembling. He stepped forward, standing between Zara and the crowd. "Please, everyone, calm down." But one man shouted loudly, "There's no calm at all. She has to explain." Marcus turned to look at Zara. His eyes said one thing: "Tell me the truth, even if it hurts you." Zara clenched her fists, then took a deep breath. "The Northern Project. It was definitely my fault." The whole room gasped. Zara continued, "I was too young, too inexperienced. I followed the wrong group of advisors, thinking that development would bring faster results. I didn't listen to the residents. That project failed, and I've regretted it for the past 3 years." The murmurs subsided, not exactly forgiveness, but less anger. Zara looked down at the ground, her voice so soft that Marcus felt pain for her. "I'm not shirking responsibility. I stand here today to make amends. And because I believe Riverstone and Marcus deserve a better story." A man from the front row stood up and said, "But you've failed once already. How can you be sure you won't fail again?" Zara opened her mouth. But before she could speak, Marcus stepped forward. "Because this time," he said, "she's not doing it alone." Zara looked up, her eyes spoke louder than words of thanks. Marcus continued, "I will oversee every step. I will be right here among everyone. And I promise if anything goes wrong, I will be the first to stop it." A few people looked at him, and for the first time a glimmer of trust appeared. But before the room could calm down, the community center doors suddenly burst open. A group of 3 reporters walked in. Microphones were raised. Cameras switched on. "Miss Hale, is your statement about the Riverstone project genuine, or just a PR stunt to cover up past failures? Are you creating a new image to save the company's stock? Marcus Johnson, do you know she's been criticized for land manipulation?" The whole room was in chaos. Zara stood frozen. Marcus looked at her. Her face was deathly pale. A reporter shoved a microphone in Zara's face and asked, "Do you admit that you are using impoverished communities as tools?" Marcus stepped forward, blocking Zara's path. "Enough." The reporter raised his voice. "Who are you to decide what is enough?" Marcus looked directly into the camera. "I'm a Riverstone resident, and I'm going to say this once and for all: Zara didn't use anyone. She saved this neighborhood from being sold to a real estate company. And if you want to know the truth, look at her being here every day, not on a PR stage." The air paused for a beat. The reporter was silent for a few seconds, then continued taking photos and taking notes, but not as aggressively as before. Zara gently touched Marcus's arm. "Thank you." But Marcus shook his head. "No, you don't need to thank me, but you need to be prepared, Zara. This is just the beginning." Zara lowered her eyes, and Marcus knew she was struggling with her greatest fear, the fear of failing in front of someone she respected. The meeting ended in chaos. People left with mixed feelings, skepticism, anger, but also a glimmer of renewed hope. Zara and Marcus stood alone in the nearly empty room. Zara spoke softly, her voice trembling as she tried to control it. "Marcus, I'm sorry. My past will make things more difficult for you." Marcus looked at her for a long time. "Zara, I chose to go with you. Not because your past is blameless, but because I see you're trying to fix it." Zara looked up. Her eyes were wet but stronger than before. "I'm afraid," she said. "Afraid that I'll drag you down." Marcus approached so quietly that he made no sound. No, his voice was deep and warm. "You didn't pull me down. You pulled me up." Zara took a deep breath as if holding on to that saying to weather the storm outside. Marcus continued, his voice firm. "We'll get through this. But from now on, you're not allowed to stand alone anymore." Zara looked at him longer than ever before. And in that moment, though no one had said a word, Marcus knew they are no longer two isolated individuals. They are a team, and they are about to face the biggest storm of their lives together. After that chaotic meeting, it started to rain, a heavy, persistent rain, much like the moods of both of them. Marcus led Zara out of the community center, pulling his thin jacket over her head, even though he himself was soaking wet. But Zara said nothing. She walked beside him, head bowed, her small shoulders hunched as if bearing the weight of the world. When they reached the car, Zara stopped. "Marcus," her voice was as thin as a thread about to break, "I think I've messed everything up." Marcus stood before her, looking directly into those eyes that were both strong and fragile. "No, she's not causing trouble. We're just caught in a storm." Zara took a shallow breath, but the storm could sweep everything away. Marcus shook his head. "Not when we're standing together." Zara looked up, her eyes filled with gratitude mixed with a glimmer of hope. For a moment Marcus felt, if he reached out and touched her cheek, she wouldn't flinch, but he didn't. Partly out of respect, partly out of fear. That one gentle touch would change his world forever. In the following days, the real storm of public opinion arrived. News spread. Articles recalling Zara's past failures flooded the internet. Riverstone Block was divided into two camps. Those who believed in the project, those who were angry and skeptical. Marcus read every comment, every post, and felt a pang in his heart. It hurt even more to see the name Zara mentioned alongside such venomous words. Every night, Zara worked late into the night. She was almost completely exhausted, but she didn't give up. And Marcus always shows up at the right time. We had a meeting at the office at night. In the morning, we went down to the site to survey it. In the afternoon, we sat with the residents and explained every detail. One evening, as the two were reviewing the design for the 11th time that day, Zara put down her pen. "Marcus, if you hadn't saved me from that car that day, do you think any of this would have happened today?" Marcus looked up. "I don't know, but I do know one thing. What, no matter what happens, I still want to see her." Zara paused. A blush appeared on her cheeks. "Marcus, it's hard for me to concentrate when you talk like that." Marcus smiled. "Well, I can't concentrate either." That moment was gentle, simple, but for them it was a balm that healed all their wounds. Then the most important day arrived, the day the final plan was announced to all residents of Riverstone Block. The hall was more than twice as crowded this time. Some people were nervous, some were hopeful. Some were just there to see if Marcus and Zara could handle the pressure. Marcus stepped onto the stage first. No expensive suit, no shiny shoes. He wore a light blue shirt and khaki pants, exactly the image of a man from this neighborhood. He spoke in a low, slow, but passionate voice. "That day, everyone asked me why I trusted Zara Hale. I thought, the answer lies right in this plan." He displayed the detailed blueprints on a large screen. Not fancy drawings, but a realistic model with a conservation house, a playground, an educational center, local shops, and a housing area with fixed rents for former residents. The whole room buzzed with excitement. Marcus continued, "We're not tearing down Riverstone. We're rebuilding it so people can have a safer life. And all of these designs are based on your input." Mr. Harris stood up. "What about the rent? What about us being evicted?" Marcus invited him closer. He handed him a thick stack of files. "Rent prices will remain the same for 10 years, and existing residents will be given priority in owning low-cost homes. No one, I repeat, no one will be evicted." The room fell silent. A silence, very different from before. Then Zara stepped up. She wasn't holding any documents. She wasn't holding a microphone like she'd used for a speech. She walked to the edge of the stage and looked at each person individually. "I know I've been wrong," she said slowly, without evasiveness. "I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to correct my mistakes and to prove that I can do right." Zara looked towards Marcus. Her gaze softened. "And I learned one thing: true leaders don't stand atop a pedestal. True leaders stand where everyone else stands, among the anxieties, the injustices, the fears." She placed her hand over her heart. "Marcus taught me that." Marcus was slightly surprised and turned to look at her. Zara nodded gently as if to say to him, "Thank you for standing next to me." The room was quiet. Then, unexpectedly, an elderly resident stood up. "I believe Zara," she said. "And I believe Marcus." Another person stood up, then another, and then another. Not all, but enough to create a positive wave. Zara breathed a sigh of relief. Marcus saw her shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. Construction began a few months later. The sound of excavators, the sound of children laughing, the sound of neighbors talking about the future. Riverstone Block has truly changed. Marcus no longer directs the project. He becomes the bridge between engineers, workers, and residents. He works late into the night, his hands calloused, but his eyes shine as brightly as they did when he was a young CEO. And Zara, she changed too. She was no longer just a cold, aloof CEO. She frequently visited construction sites wearing boots and a safety helmet, sitting down for lunch with the workers and asking each person what difficulties they were facing. People gradually understood. She wasn't here to show off. She was here to build something real. One autumn evening, as they stood on the rooftop of a building under construction, looking down at the Riverstone Block, illuminated by temporary lights, "Zara," said Marcus, "I never thought I'd find hope in a place that once instilled fear." Marcus asked, "What are you afraid of?" Zara looked deep into his eyes. "I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid no one will believe in me. I'm afraid of loving someone who will make me vulnerable." The last sentence made Marcus's heart stop. Zara took a shallow breath. "I'm scared." You know, Marcus took a step closer, just enough so that the wind wouldn't get in between. "I was scared too," he said. "But I learned one thing. What hope always arrives at the right time. If only we are brave enough to open the door." The wind blew. The city below sparkled. And when Zara looked up, her eyes held something they had both avoided for too long. Marcus reached out and gently touched her cheek. Zara didn't back down. She gently tilted her head into his hand. A moment of silence. Then Marcus leaned down. The kiss was gentle, slow, and meaningful. Not rushed, not possessive. A kiss between two people who had endured much pain, much loss, and finally found each other. A year later, Riverstone Block was completely transformed. A new playground opened. An educational center was operational. Residents lived in safe, clean homes. On the day of the housewarming, Ava ran to hug Marcus' daddy. "This is our new home, right?" Marcus chuckled, picking his daughter up. "That's right." Zara walked closer, wearing the same shirt, the one Marcus had lent her on the first day. Marcus looked at her and smiled. "You still have it?" Zara nodded. "I kept it, because it reminds me of the man who saved my life." Marcus looked at Zara. Zara looked at Marcus. Ava stepped between the two of them and took their hands. "Daddy, Zara, we're family now, right?" Marcus and Zara looked at each other, and for the first time without avoiding eye contact. Marcus replied, "Yes, Ava, we are family." Zara holds Marcus's hand. Ava holds Zara's hand. The three of them stood in the middle of the new neighborhood under the warm, golden afternoon light, like three final pieces of a puzzle that had fit together perfectly after a long journey. Marcus whispered, "Sometimes, love comes from a storm." Zara replied, "And sometimes it rebuilds an entire community." Ava laughed loudly. "And let's build our family together." Marcus and Zara burst out laughing, pulling Ava into their arms for a tight hug. The scene faded. Marcus's voice whispered, "Thank you for being with me. From the storm to the calm." If you've been with Marcus, Ava, and Zara this far, please take a moment to like the video, because each like is a message that healing stories like this still matter. If this story resonates with you, makes you see yourself in Marcus, or strengthens your belief in kindness, please share the video to spread hope to more people. Who knows, someone out there might need a small ray of light like this. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories. Heartwarming journeys where love, kindness, and resilience always find their way back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this story. See you in the next video.